Well, welcome in LSU fans. My name is Bryce Koon alongside Glen West. We welcome you into the Go 24/7 podcast. And Glen, have we recovered from the nightmare that was last Saturday night? And one of the worst parts, we had to sit there and record the post game pod in the rain. It's still raining in Baton Rouge, but it's hopefully we can not as somber of a podcast here today.
Yeah, finally dried off from Saturday. It was a rainy walk home too. I walked to and from the stadium for home games just because I live close enough to where I don't have to sit in traffic for an hour and a half to get a mile. So that's especially for an Alabama game. I'm sure a lot of LSU fans can relate to that. It can be tough sledding sometimes after those Bama games, but I think look, you put that one behind you, you move forward here for the next 3 weeks. And I think kind of the bigger question over and just kind of instead of just what these next three games look like, I think it's more of how can we use these next three games to get the most out of the program and build the most momentum for this offseason and kind of what you want to learn going into next year.
Yeah, Glenn, it's kind of funny because I feel like over the past 24 hours, I've just been reading on social media. And obviously, we were at player interviews with a couple of other media members last night. And it's like, okay, here's the percentage chance of LSU being able to make the SEC title game. It's not the craziest thing in the world. I mean, when you look at it, I don't want to spend too much time delving into the situations. I'll let people do their own research and look at all that. But I felt it was interesting as we kind of start to take a look at this Florida game and then really what the next three games kind of entail is that you have to treat this like you're playing for a spot in Atlanta, which mathematically you are doing that. But I think the biggest thing, we talked a bit about this on Saturday and wanted to kind of kick the podcast off with this is, how does this team respond? Like, I think that's the biggest thing that I'm looking at on Saturday is how do you respond? It's a Florida team that has been destroyed by injuries in terms of, what they bring to the table. Billy Napier, obviously, they came out publicly and said he's going to be the head coach. So it's an interesting situation in Gainesville. But at the very root of this, Glenn, it's how do you respond? You're going into another team's environment. It's going to, should be a good environment. It's a rivalry game. I mean, all of those factors. Would you echo that sentiment? Is that the biggest thing you're looking at? Is how does this group respond after really just a demoralizing last 6 quarters? I would say.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of it for sure. I mean, I think just in talking with the players yesterday, they kind of have flushed it and they understand like what happened on Saturday was inexcusable and how how embarrassed kind of they were from that performance. But look, I think the only thing you can do if you're these players is just continuing to uh, show up and give your best. And look, I think we just in what we've talked about, what we've written about, we understand that LSU's probably not where they need to be personnel wise. When you talk about
Yeah.
wanting to compete at the very very top of the SEC, winning championship games, winning, making the playoff, going deep into the playoff, they still have some work they need to do in that respect. And that's I mean, that's nothing on these current players. Like these current players, I don't think have given up on the season. I don't think that they have shown in their actions that they, are not, trying. But I just think they're just not executing. And I think some of that has to go on them. Some of it has to go on what these coaches are asking the players to do. And look, I think that you kind of go into a weekend like this. It's your final road game against, a Florida team that, yeah, has been banged up, but also I don't think has, stopped playing for Billy Napier. I mean, I think there's a
Mhm.
reason that they came out a week or two ago and said that Napier is going to still be the coach going forward. They only lost to Tennessee by 6. They lost to Georgia. I believe they were in that Georgia game for
Yeah.
quite a while. And that was just last week. So look, this is a group that's going to fight and they're going to be feisty. And in that environment in Gainesville, that's a tough place to play. That's a tough place to win. And I'm going to be very interested to see kind of what the mindset is like of this LSU team. Um, Look, I think most people know that their playoff chances are very, very slim. Their SEC championship chances are a little higher, but still, not something that I think you would say at this point is likely to happen. So there's still some things to play for if you want to think that way as a player. But for me, And if I'm some of these veteran players in particular, I want to put some good film out there. I want to put some good tape out there for the last 3 games of the year. There's going to be a ton of guys going to the draft from this offensive line, certainly from this defensive line. When you look at guys like Braden Swinson and Savion Jones, Greg Penn, there's Major Burns and Sage Ryan in this back half of the secondary. Jordan Gilbert could be thrown into that mix maybe too. So there's, everything that we've heard and everything that we've spoken to, it doesn't look like they're going to do some mass youth movement here over the last 3 weeks. I think they're going to continue to see a lot of the same guys we've seen so far, and we'll just see if they can put some better performances together here over the last 3 weeks. But it's you gotten to the point here where you have to see it to believe it, because this last 6 quarters have been that bad.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's been not just bad, it's been very bad. The past 6 quarters, I would say we've seen, individual players have nightmarish runs in terms of just like you're living a nightmare. I mean, I think Garrett Nussmeier would probably admit, maybe not publicly, that it's been a little bit like that for him. Just probably the worst stretch he's played in his entire career. And I think for LSU's in the middle of that. They got to find a way to get out of this funk of the last 6 quarters to where they can play back up to some certain capabilities. And it's been a lot of Jekyll and Hyde, with this team. They've flashed, they've shown why they could be a top 12 team for the playoff, and they've also shown why you can't count on them to be a top 12 team for the playoff at times. Glenn, when you look at this Florida game, obviously the big story surrounding is, the Gators have been just, for lack of better words, just devastated by injury, the injury bug, especially the quarterback position. Graham Mertz to me was a high floor, low ceiling type of player, could provided some stability to the position. DJ Lagway, young player, very promising player for Florida. And like you mentioned, that Florida-Georgia game, LSU was off. And as a lot of people know, my wife's a UGA grad, so we tuned into that game. Florida might have won that game if Lagway doesn't get hurt. I mean, he was playing that well for that amount of time. So, they go to the former Ivy Leaguer, that's playing quarterback. But just your thoughts on this Florida team, some of the challenges they might pose, and what's LSU up against Florida's offense? Because it's a group that runs the ball. Napier's an offensive mind. I feel like it's a chance to get right back on the right track. It's not explosive in terms of what Florida does offensively, but it's a chance to build some confidence heading into the last 3 games.
Yeah, I think there is opportunities here to have some success on both sides of the ball. I think if you kind of look at offensively what they've done, they do lean heavily on the run game. I think they have 19 touchdowns on the run and 14 or 12 or 14 via the pass. So they're very much when they get into scoring positions, they lean heavily on the run game, and I think that they're down into their they're down a couple running backs too, so they're kind of into their backups, but the backups are even playing well. When you mentioned Jacoby Johnson and I think Bow is his name. What's his first name? The running back Bow. What's his?
I can't remember his name.
Yeah. Oh, Jaden Bow. That's his name. Yeah. So those two, I think, are going to be the guys. Look, they had 29 carries between the two in that Georgia game a couple weeks ago. But really, to me, this is going to come down to whether or not Lagway plays. If Lagway plays, then I think he poses a couple more interesting problems for LSU. If he plays, I'll be curious to see kind of how mobile he is. I mean, they made it seem like a pretty serious hamstring injury a couple weeks ago, and I think that they got some good news back that it wasn't maybe as serious as they initially thought. But with that being said, he's kind of the future of your program. You're 4-5 right now. How much do you really want to risk, potentially, harming him any further by playing him in this game is going to be a question I think he has to answer, and Napier has to answer. And if not, if he doesn't play, I like LSU's chances a lot to have success against Aiden Warner. I mean, he's the third string quarterback, but he's also kind of that pure pocket passer, not a guy that's going to run on you. LSU's going to have opportunities to get in the backfield and create some negative plays there. So if it's him behind center, I feel a lot better about LSU's chances of having some success defensively. But if it is Lagway, he's got a cannon of an arm. He's a freshman. Yeah. Florida's got really nothing to lose in this game. I think they're going to air it out a ton if Lagway plays in this game. So from a pure talent perspective, you certainly take a little bit of extra notice if he's the one that's in the game. And then defensively, I think this Florida defense has not created a ton of turnovers. I mean, I know they picked Carson Beck off 3 times a couple weeks ago, but this is a group that hasn't been totally opportunistic in that respect. I don't know that they've created a ton of negative plays. You just hope LSU's offensive line and the running backs and just I would love to see some kind of a pulse in the run game in this one. Just kind of assert your dominance. I mean, we talked about it here, but you mentioned Florida's banged up in the secondary. If they can get into the second level with the run game, I think that they have a chance to really knock off some big plays in that respect. But you've got to get to that second level first, that second and third level first, and they have not proven that they can do that at a very consistent just kind of a consistent level over the last several weeks. So we'll see. I think that there's opportunities certainly for Nussmeier to make mistakes in this game as well. Like, I mean, they just have not, they've been very disappointing offensively these last 2 weeks. And I kind of described it, I think, in the game after, or the minutes after that, that loss to Alabama, but the offense was trending up for like the first 4 weeks of the season. I think you can make the argument that they were on the rise. And then when they kind of hit, that, it was kind of when they hit that Texas A&M game, but really the South Carolina game too. I mean, there were a lot of mistakes made in that first half of that South Carolina game. You could kind of see where defenses could maybe have success against them. And then A&M and Alabama have just completely leaned into, we're going to take away the run. We're going to get after Garrett Nussmeier. We're going to get in his face, and we're going to make him make some pressure throws. And he just has not been able to do that under duress this last couple of weeks. He's put the ball in harm's way too many times, and LSU's suffering because of it. I mean, he's got 9 or 10 interceptions over the last 5 games, and it's a big reason here why LSU's on a 2-game losing streak. So we'll see if they can kind of find some balance in this offense, if they can kind of take some of that pressure off of Nussmeier. But it's also going to be on Nuss to not put the ball in harm's way, and because it's been a trend now that's it's pretty ugly, and it's taken a pretty drastic turn from what we were talking about maybe 5 or 6 weeks ago with him.
Yeah, following suit with the key trends of LSU had success running and passing the ball in this game when they face defenses that are in the top 30, top 40 statistically of getting after the quarterback and pass rush rate and creating havoc. They struggle, and they don't just struggle, they struggle immensely. I mean, you go point back the 2 games that you can really look back at. I would say, honestly, the one that you can really look back at and say they found their stride late was obviously the Ole Miss game. Of course, the South Carolina game, they found some things offensively. I think a lot of that was due to the injury of Lenoris Sellers and South Carolina having to hand it back over to their defense time and time again. But the past 2 games, you've run into 2 of the best defensive fronts, in the SEC, at least in terms of just being able to create havoc. Kind of crazy. Alabama's actually not good at sacking the quarterback. They're good at, creating pressure, pass rush rate. But, I mean, I just think it's a microcosm of this season, Glenn. It's a microcosm of what this team is. When they face competition that's equal or better, they really struggle. They really do struggle in that category.
Well, I mean, just look at kind of their SEC performances, and you look at kind of the numbers that they put up. South Carolina, you scored 36 points. Arkansas, you scored 34. What do those 2 games have in common? They were your 2 best rushing performances of SEC play.
Yeah.
Like, you had some balance there, and they were able to consistently move the ball up and down the field. They got into position a number of times against South Carolina where they didn't score in the first half, where you thought maybe that would come back to bite them. And that was probably one of the better defensive fronts you faced all season, the way those guys are playing right now. So LSU has proven that they can do it on that side of the ball. They've just gotten into a really, really bad funk here the last couple of weeks, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they haven't been able to run the ball at all. I mean, like, just at all. Outside of the one Caden Durham 45-yard run, they've just been completely shut down. And then the second part here is that Nussmeier has faced some pressure, and he's had to put the ball into some pretty tight windows. Like, I don't think we can honestly say that the wide receivers have created the kind of separation these last couple games that they were getting maybe the first 5-6 weeks of the season. And because of that, you're seeing some mistakes, and you're seeing game-changing plays at the worst times of the game. So it's a little bit of everything of why this offense maybe isn't where it was earlier this season, but I think over these last 3 games and starting this weekend, you're facing some defenses here that allow you to maybe build some confidence and build some momentum if you're able to kind of eliminate your own self-inflicted mistakes.
Yeah, no, that's put that pretty well. When you flip it over to, we talked about the injuries on the offensive side of football without Lagway. LSU defensively, I mean, I went back and watched the Alabama game, and it's a lot of just Glenn. I feel like we've reached the point of the season where last year, I will never forget, Greg Penn stands in the field in Tuscaloosa, said it's communication, and you, myself, I mean, all of us in the media sitting there saying it's week 10. It's November. Like, this is some, we've been talking about this all year. And the first thing that the defense talks about, post game is, or one of the first things, and then obviously this week was, doing your job. You just got to go out there and do your job. And it just feels like it's, different topic, put a different label on it, but the same thing. This team has not been able to consistently do their job, week in, week out. And obviously, look, that's not a knock just on LSU. There's 100+ FBS teams that are trying to figure out how to do that week in, week out. There's a lot of parity in the sport this year. But I feel like this is a chance where it's just an opportunity to go out there and just be fundamentally sound. Glenn, I don't think anyone's asking for a 4-sack day from Braden Swinson, 12 quarterback pressures from the front seven. It's just be gap sound, be assignment sound, and show that, you can put together a full 60 minutes. Because, look, you throw in the bye week. I mean, it's been ever since Arkansas, which feels like a month and a half ago at this point, to where they've really played a suffocating style of defense. Yeah, that first half against A&M was that.
Yeah,
But man, they
that
need
might have
that.
been their best half of football season, but it was because they were facing a guy in Connor Wegman who was
Couldn't move.
not running. He was not a threat to run. So, yeah, look, I think you make a lot of good points there. Like we haven't seen those guys get into the backfield and create as much havoc as they have. Like I said, if Lagway is not the one that's behind center, I think you have a great chance against Warner to create some negative plays in that game. Look, I think the defense doesn't worry me as much in this game as much as the offense does, just because, like, I think defensively they're going to be able to do some things, whether it is Lagway or Warner in the game. Like, if Lagway's in the game, I think him from a mobility standpoint is going to be pretty compromised. That's just the feeling that you get when you're dealing with a hamstring and your young quarterback. You probably don't want to put him in those kinds of positions where he's being asked to run the ball 12, 13, 14 times. But offensively, to me, I come back to just don't kick yourself. Just don't kill yourself in this game. You should be able to move the ball pretty efficiently on this defense, but I'm sorry, I don't want to take it back to the offense here, but
That's a big key,
defensively,
though.
I mean, like, yeah, it's the biggest key to me. And defensively, like, I think that the progress that Ashton Stamps and Zy Alexander have made at cornerback lead me to believe that they can do some things on the outside. Can these safeties come up and tackle in the running lanes are going to be very important to me. Greg Penn and Whit Weeks, obviously, you're going to have to fill those running lanes as well. But to me, it's the safety and the linebackers that I look at closely on this defense is to kind of eliminate some of those explosive plays this weekend against Florida offense that has been kind of middle to below the pack in a lot of these statistical categories.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. Before we move into our predictions, Glenn, maybe give me one player on each side of the ball that you're looking forward to seeing if they can have a big game.
Yeah, I think for me, look, offensively, I would love to see Caden Durham have a big game. I mean, I think he's had a couple of them here. And really, like, if that game at Alabama hadn't gotten so out of hand where they needed to throw the ball as much as they did down the stretch to try to give themselves a chance, I think, you see Durham carry the ball, 15, 16, 17 times in that game if it's a little bit closer. But you'd like to see him get those kinds of touches in this game. I think he's somebody that has an opportunity to really kind of explode this weekend against a susceptible Florida defense if they can open up those holes. But and then defensively, I think I'm probably looking at one of those safeties, man, Jordan Gilbert or Sage Ryan. All eyes are going to be on that unit because of just how poorly it went last weekend against Alabama for that group in terms of stopping the run. So look, I think there's a number of guys you could point to on defense, but to me, I'm really looking hard at that safety room and just kind of what kind of plays those guys can make in the back half of the defense.
Yeah, I mean the safety room's gotta be better. I mean, just had bottom line has to be better. Has to show some versatility and ability to cover the pass. I like
What
what you
about
talked
you?
about there. Yeah, I liked what you talked about there. I think offensively, I'm going to cheat here. I'm going to go DJ Chester. I
Yeah,
think that he's got to have a good game. I
that's a good
mean,
one.
for lack of better words, I mean, I think not having Dellinger next to him hurts just a little bit having that veteran presence. But this is a guy who will now have spent 2 full years in the program. I think in the beginning of the year, people are like, okay, yeah, you got questions on the offensive line heading into 2025, but you're going to have Chester. And I think through, as we kind of enter the middle of November, people are wondering, okay, is Chester going to be able to be that center for you in 2025? So really important for him to kick off this next 3-game stretch with some confidence. And then, so that's my offensive guy that I'm just looking at how does he direct this offensive line who really struggled in picking up blitzes
Yeah,
and what Alabama did. They really struggled in that category. And then defensively, I was cheating towards the safeties there, but I'm going to go back to a guy, and I think that we've talked about him so much. I'm going to go Savion Jones because I think that Swinson can have a big game here. But Savion Jones, we've had great conversation on the board about, what is his outlook look like? I mean, in terms of NFL projection, I think that these next 3 games could get him right back into the conversation that maybe he was in, last month when he was kind of being that, secondary pass rusher, that secondary guy alongside Braden Swinson. So Savion Jones to me, and just not just pass rushing, Glenn, but setting the edge and really getting back. And I know I mentioned earlier, doing your job, setting the edge, being able to funnel things back into the middle of this defense. Um, that's huge. And Jones has been a piece of that, a big piece of it when they've had success with it. When they haven't, you can largely look at not just Jones, but a couple other players that they just get outside of gap integrity and try to do too much, and it ends up blowing up in their face. So those are the 2 guys that I'm looking at there, kind of going forward. Look, DJ Chester, Paul Mabinga, man, if Dellinger doesn't play, whatever, we're going to obviously see what happens there. But DJ Chester needs a big game on the offense
yeah.
side of the football. He needs some confidence right there.
Yeah, I mean,
Glenn, go
we
ahead.
talked with Emory Jones yesterday about him and about just kind of the offensive line as a whole, and that story actually is already up on our site. But by the time many people are seeing this or reading this or listening to this, not reading this, but yeah, just yeah, look, I think you make a good point there, and that I think it extends beyond Chester though. I think all these guys on the O line need to have a good game, need to feel like they win the battle up front because they've been out hustle, out physical for a lot of these matchups here over the last couple of weeks in conference play, and they've got to be able to get past that to kind of really feel good about themselves going out of this last 3 games.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you. All right, prediction time. I believe LSU is under a touchdown favorite. I think last time I saw it was like 4.5, 5.5 points. On the road in Gainesville. It feels like a bounce back opportunity for both teams. I mean, I think Florida's going to come in and fight. I think that they're going to get back in that home crowd. They're fighting to get to a bowl game. They view this as a winnable game in terms of this, but LSU comes in as a wounded animal, and sometimes that can really help you in games like this, back against the wall. Well, Glenn, what's your thought process here? Where are you rolling with this prediction?
Yeah, I got LSU winning this game. Like I think that they bounce back and that they get a big win on the road. Like to me, Florida is they're going to play hard. They're going to fight. They're just so beat up right now with injuries that I think LSU should have opportunities here to really move the ball on offense and slow them down defensively. Like I will say my prediction probably hinders on whether or not Lagway plays. Like if
Yeah,
it's if it's Warner that's behind center, I think they can absolutely win this game by a couple scores. But if Lagway's behind center and he's having a good game passing the ball, like I think this could be a 1-score game, and that they can stick with LSU for the majority of this game. But I really like LSU's opportunities here offensively to be able to move the ball, to bounce back in a way that that they kind of need to after these last 6 quarters. And the secondary right now for Florida is pretty decimated. So I would imagine they take a bunch of shots and that they throw the ball 35, 40 times a game. But if they have to throw it much more than that, we know what happens with Nussmeier. So I think they have to be able to balance it out with the run a little bit
yeah.
more. And but if they do that, I think they can win this game. I think I'm kind of sitting in that 34 27 range, maybe 34-24 if Florida's without Lagway as their quarterback. So like I think the LSU comes out of here with a win.
Yeah, I kind of sit in that same category, and I even offer this. I'm not going to say I'm going to be disappointed by this, Glenn, but if we look at Nussmeier's final stat line, and then look, I get that the bread and butter is the pass. I'm not saying go away from what makes you successful, but like you said, I want to see more balance. It would be awesome to see like Garrett Nussmeier finish for like 26 of 33, but LSU have run the ball like 28 times. You know what I'm saying? Like we don't have to see that pass attempts number get into the 40s. Like, because I don't know how much you really learn more about this team. And I understand there's 3 games left and you are who you are to a certain extent. I don't know how much you learn if LSU wins this game 35-20, but Nussmeier had to throw it 47 times. It's just, well, you know what? It works against teams that they're better than on paper, but it doesn't work against teams that they're not better in. So I'm with you. I do think LSU wins this game. I've got them winning 33-21. But like I said, man, and we'll kind of end this, wanted to get your thoughts on that. I mean, would it be more impressive to you, or would you take more away if LSU wins this game? Let's say Nussmeier throws less than 35 passes, but they run it 25 to 30 times to where you're starting to see, maybe not 30 times, but 20 to 25 times, and you're starting to see, okay, that's the balance they have to have in order to be more dangerous and effective.
Absolutely. Like I'm past them throwing it 45, 50 times a game and trying to slug it out that way. Like if they can show some balance in this offense over the last 3 weeks, if they can get into the lab and find some answers to a lot of these questions that have been plaguing them, I think you feel much better about just kind of where they're going if they can kind of start to figure out some of these things over the last 3 weeks. So, yeah, I want to see some balance. I would love it if Nussmeier is passing under 40 times in this game and that they kind of balance it out. I mean, they did against Alabama. It might not seem like it, but they did rush the ball 24 times. I know 6 of those came from Nussmeier, but 6 of those rushes attempts came from Nussmeier. But if they can get north of 25 and kind of south of 30, kind of in that 27, 28 range and be effective doing it, absolutely. I think that's a huge vote of confidence for that group as they kind of, come out of there, hopefully, kind of with the win and feeling good about themselves a little bit.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. It would be nice to see that happen. LSU at Florida in the Swamp on.
You just need something good to happen after the last 6 quarters, right? I mean, LSU fans have been put through a lot over these last 2 weeks. They deserve a nice, confident win, but
a shellacking, one where you maybe get to see Ricky Collins in the 4th quarter. I mean,
that would be nice. But I wouldn't go that.
I wouldn't expect it, but it would be. It would do it. It cut down on the therapy sessions in and around Baton Rouge, I think, for people over the next month. But, hey, we appreciate you listening. We appreciate you watching and hanging out with us here on the Go 24/7 podcast. As always, make sure you check out all that written content over at Go 24/7 Recruiting, baseball recruiting, basketball recruiting, football recruiting in full swing. And, lots of great stuff coming in, lots of good news potentially coming in on the recruiting front as well. Sonny Ship doing a great job over there with that too. And like I said, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, check us out all where you get your podcasts, whether that's audio or video. And he is Glen West. My name's Bryce Koon. We will catch you next time here on the Go 24/7 podcast.